Hey, welcome aboard. It's Walter here. And today I want to talk about how to improve your trading decisions. So it turns out there's really two areas that you need to focus in on. This comes from psychology. And when I did, I did a long haul in psychology. And a couple of things I learned about the way that we think is number one, we don't necessarily make the right decisions. And so if you think about it, when you're driving, let's say, and you decide that you're going to speed and go above the speed limit, that's a calculated risk you're taking. So you know, for example, that there are consequences. If you get caught, you might have to pay some money, pay a fine. You also probably consider the risks. What's going on around your environment? Are you speeding on an icy road or a wet, rainy road versus a dry desert with no cars around and no buildings or anything? And with trading, it's the same thing. So when we're making a decision, we have these two things to think about. Oh, by the way, if this sort of stuff interests you, you can click the link above or below and get in or get more information about the small account big profits class, which is actually closing pretty soon. So I would get in there if you're interested, if this sort of thing interests you. So when you're in a trade, you have to decide, okay, well, what are the possibilities? What are the consequences of what's happening here? That's number one. And like for example, if I add to my position, if I pull some of my position off and take some profit, if I tighten up my stop, what are all these consequences that are likely to occur if I do any of these things? And one of the things I like to look at, so that's number one. So what are the consequences? And number two is kind of what's the overall environment? What are the probabilities of different things happening? So let me share with you. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to share with you my Actually, I'm going to share with you my fancy schmancy chart here. This is like a table. And what you're looking at here are the open position ratios right now, as of just a few minutes ago, according to IG Markets. You can get these at lots of brokers, Awanda, Saxo. Lots of brokers are going to share this information with you. What I like to do is like, okay, where is the crowd trading? If they're trading heavily on one side, I want to be on the other side, because we know that the retail traders typically go against the trend. So for example, right now, really interesting one is that the euro is getting really close to 70% long. That means I want to look at shorting the euro. And so let's say that I decided, you know what, I might short the euro. If I'm going to short the euro, I have to decide, like I said, the two things. What are the consequences of that? Well, consequences are that I could get stopped out, or if I look at the chart, maybe the market's going lower and lower and lower. Do I really think it's going to go lower? It could find support and bounce a bit and retrace. Even if it is in a downtrend, I could get stopped out if I get in at the wrong spot, or if my stop loss is too tight, or what have you. So that's number one. But number two is, what are the probabilities? Now, if I'm looking at this, what I'm saying to myself is, a lot of traders are going long the euro. It's probably a really good idea to short the euro. Why? Because historically we know that our traders that do this, that go against the trend, are wrong. Well, they make money, they make little tiny profits, and they take really big losses. And if you think about it, that makes sense because they're going against the trend. We know this from looking at the 43 million trade study thing that FXCM did, and that it's clear too. Whenever you look at the numbers, you'll see it's not always the case. It's about 9 out of 10 times there'll be a strong trend in one direction, and all the traders will be going the other way. So, for example, on the Euro Singapore, this is another 84% of our market is shorting the Euro Singapore, so we want to go long. 84% is going long, so we want to short it. And the euro is getting into that area too. So this is one thing that I want to make really clear about trading, is that typically as traders, we like to go against the crowd. We're the type of people that typically will go against the crowd. We think for ourselves. We're not like those who follow the crowd. And so when you're sitting down, you're making your trading decision, a couple of things I think are important. Number one is to consider, okay, like, first of all, we have way more decisions than we available than we think. So when you're in a trade, you might think, well, should I stay in the trade or should I get out? But actually, You have many more decisions than that. You could take partial off. You could take half or a third of your position off. You could add to your position. You could tighten your stop. If your stop's at 1R, say it's 100 pips away, you can move it to 50R. So if you get stopped out, you only lose half. There's lots and lots of things that you can do here. And one of the things that I recommend that you do as a trader is start to record how good you are at estimating probabilities. So if you're in a trade and you think that there's a 70% chance that it's going to keep going in your favor because you're looking at something like the open position ratios, you think that the trend is still strong, go back and rate your trades when you're doing them, when you're in them, and see if you actually nail it, if you're right, if it's 7 out of 10 times that you were right in those instances. So you can just give it a rating, like on a 1 to 10 scale. How likely do I think it is that the market's going to keep going in my direction? Or the opposite. On a 1 to 10 scale, how likely do I think it is the market's going to go against me? These sorts of things. What you want to do is get data to see how good you are. And typically what we find is that traders in the beginning have a really tough time estimating probabilities, and then later on you get really good at it. Again, we're going to talk all about estimating probabilities and looking at how to grow a small account quickly in the Small Accounts Big Profits course. If you want to get in on that, click the link above or below, and I'll see you around. Happy trading. See ya. Bye.